this again?
Hi, all. So I was going to read The Gift of the Magi because it's one of my favorite short stories for the holidays.
And it's festive.
Yeah, and so we thought, hey, this would be a fun thing to do. But I also wanted Sir Chunk to participate. However, I know he's going to be obnoxious in this, so we're trying to make this as not Sir Chunky as possible.
What do you mean? I teach this story.
And
it's
I'm
a very
sure
delightful
you mean it's
tale.
obnoxious. Yeah, it's a great example of irony. If you ever want to try to find an example to teach irony. Okay. What did you want to say about the title?
I was just going to read the title.
Okay, so he's going to read the parts of Jim and the title, and I'm going to read...
And random other parts, suddenly without warning.
I hope not. And then I'm going to try to read the narrator and Della, and hopefully we can read it seriously enough that you can enjoy it.
I'll be the stuck-up friend and the creepy old lady also.
Okay, I didn't know there was a stuck-up friend.
There is.
I don't remember the stuck-up
Just
friend.
where she borrows the necklace from.
That's the necklace, not the gift
right.
of the Magi.
Never mind. That's the necklace, which is also a good story for irony.
Well, I'm like, what stuck-up friend? You thinking of the necklace and you were.
I was. There is a crazy old lady in this, though.
I hope so. Are you sure that's not the necklace, too?
I don't remember for sure.
I think he's thinking about the wrong story. This is the one with the hair.
I know what it is.
Okay.
I thought of combine the two stories into one.
Anyway, this is the famous short story, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry.
The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry.
It's not O. Henri.
O. Henry.
You're just getting upset about the necklace. Because that's Guy de
Guy de
Maupassant.
Maupassant?
This is just O. Henry, regular American O. Henry.
Oh, Henry.
Like the candy bar.
Oh, Henry.
Okay. So I'm going to start, and hopefully Sir Chunk, maybe he'll make some sound effects.
$1.87.
That's my part.
That was all. She had put it aside. What? Did you cut me off?
Stop it.
I'm trying to read the intro.
Yeah, I'm reading the
I'll
narration.
do the first paragraph, and then you.
We're not going to alternate
going.
paragraphs. It's going to drive.
I'll just do the first paragraph.
Fine.
$1.87. That was all. She had put it aside. 1 cent, and then another, and then another, but then not another one after that. That'd be too many. In her careful buying of meat and other food, Della counted it thrice. $1.87.
3 times.
And the next day would be Christmas.
Okay. So she has $1.87. Okay.
Which at the time was not that bad.
I mean, it was still bad.
With inflation, it's probably $80.
Yeah, well, still not much for Christmas gifts. All right. There was nothing to do but fall on the bed and cry. So Della did it. While the lady of the home is slowly growing...
This is Della crying.
While the lady of the home...
Oh, dear me. $1.87. How will I procure a delightful gift?
While the lady of the home is slowly growing quieter, we can look at the home. Furnished rooms at a cost of $8 a week. There is little more to say about it.
So, if you're paying $32 a month for rent, $1.87 is not that bad.
Also, did you notice he was like, let's talk about the home? There's nothing else to say. It was $8 a week.
Yeah, because it's cheap. It's not...
Right, but he was going to try to describe it, and then he changes his mind.
Well, it's because they're making
Henry.
the point that there's nothing in there. The home is empty. It's sparse.
The 6-page short story
They
is
are not wealthy.
300 hours long. All right. In the hall below was a letterbox, too small to hold a letter. There was an electric bell, but it could not make a sound. Also, there was a name beside the door, Mr. James Dillingham Young. When the name...
Mr. James Dillingham Young in this performance will be played by Sir Chunk.
When the name was placed there, Mr. James Dillingham Young was being paid $30 a week.
Oh.
Now, when he was being paid only $20 a week, the name seemed too long and important. It should perhaps have been Mr. James D. Young. But when Mr. James Dillingham Young entered the furnished rooms, his name became very short indeed. Mrs. James Dillingham Young put her arms warmly about him and called him Jim. You have already met her. She is Della.
Della finished her crying and cleaned the marks of it from her face. She stood by the window and looked out with interest.
No interest.
With a lack of interest. Tomorrow, as we previously declared, would be Christmas Day. And she had still $1.87 from before, with which to buy Jim a gift. She had put aside as much as she could for months, But with this result, $20 a week is not much. Much or much? You can't munch much with just $20 a week, as everyone knows. Everything had cost more than she had expected, as life sometimes lets us know.
This is a very relevant story.
Happened like that. Inflation.
Yeah, you know, bread's like $8 now. So, you know, this story is very relevant.
Yes, for just the cost of a cup of coffee, you could buy an $8 gift.
Anyway, everything that costs more than expected always happened like that.
I already said that.
Only $1.87 to buy a gift for Jim.
Getting redundant now.
Per Jim. She had had many happy hours planning something nice for him. Something nearly good enough. Something almost worth the honor of belonging to Jim.
I'm pretty awesome.
There was a looking glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you've seen the kind of looking glass that is placed in $8 furnished rooms. It was very narrow. A person could see only a little of himself at a time. However, if he was very thin and moved very quickly, he might be able to get a good view of himself. Della, being quite thin, had mastered this art. Suddenly, she turned from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brightly, but her face had lost its color. Quickly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its complete length.
The James Dillingham Youngs were very proud of 2 things, which they own. Not 7 things, not 0 things. 2 things. One was Jim's gold watch. It had once belonged to his father, and long ago it belonged to his father's father, and presumably before that his father's father's father, and you get the idea. The other thing, aside from the watch, was Della's hair.
If a queen had lived in the rooms near theirs, Della would have washed and dried her hair where the queen could see it. Della knew her hair was more beautiful than any queen's jewels and gifts.
A little bit arrogant there, Della.
If a king had lived in the same house with all his riches, Jim would have looked at his watch every time they met. Jim knew that no king had anything so valuable.
I don't know about that.
So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, shining like a falling stream of brown water. It reached below her knee. It almost made itself into a dress for her.
Can we pause for a second and be like, falling brown water is not an appealing visual? So her hair is toilet water.
It almost made itself into a dress for her. And then she put it up on her head again, nervously and quickly. Once she stopped for a moment and stood still while a tear or two ran down her face.
She put her toilet hair away.
No.
And put on her old brown coat, her brown poop coat, to match her brown hat, and her brown hair, and her brown brownness. She had brown socks on. She had a brown potato in her brown pocket, and down the street was Brownville. With the bright light still in her eyes, she moved quickly out the door and down the brown street.
Where she stopped, the sign said, Mrs. Sofroni, hair articles of all kinds.
This is the crazy old lady.
Okay. Up to the second floor, Della ran and stopped to get her breath. Mrs. Sofroni, large, too white, cold-eyed, looked at her. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della.
I buy hair, said Mrs. Sofroni. Take your hat off and let me look at it. Down fell the toilet water hair. $20, said Mrs. Sofroni, lifting the hair to feel its toilety weight.
Give it to me quick, said Della. By the way, Della's hair is worth his entire salary.
Yeah, she has really nice toilet hair.
Yeah. Oh, and the next 2 hours seemed to fly. She was going from one shop to another to find a gift for Jim, and she found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the shops, and she had looked in every shop in the city.
Hyperbole.
It was a gold watch chain, very simply made. Its value is in its rich and pure material. Because it was so plain and simple, you knew that it was very valuable. All good things are like this. It was good enough for the watch. As soon as she saw it,
for the watch,
she knew that Jim must have it. It was like him, quietness and value. Jim and the chain both had quietness and value. She paid $21 for it, and she hurried home with the chain and 87 cents.
Jim, meanwhile, is surprisingly lacking from this story.
With that
we need more Jim
on his watch, Jim could look at his watch and learn the time anywhere he might be. Though the watch was so fine, it never had a fine chain. He sometimes took it out and looked at it only when no one could see him do it.
When Della arrived home, her mind quieted a little. She began to think more reasonably as she was surrounded by all of her brown stuff. She started to try to cover the sad marks of what she had done. Love and large-hearted giving, when added together, can leave deep marks. It is never easy to cover these marks, dear friends. Never easy. Within 40 minutes, her head looked a little better. With her short hair, she looked wonderfully like a schoolboy. What the? She looked at the looking glass for a long time, hoping Jim was into schoolboys.
I hope Jim's not into schoolboys. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he looks at me a second time, he'll say I look like a girl who sings and dances for money.
A prostitute? Oh, no. Burlesque.
A burlesque dancer. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7, Jim's dinner was ready for him.
As it should be.
Yeah, because Jim must have come home and made it. Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat near the door where he always entered. Then she heard his step in the hall and her face lost color for a moment.
Clomp, 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 clomp. Those are the steps in the hall.
She often said little prayers quietly about simple everyday things, and now she said, please, God, make him think I'm still pretty.
Ironically, he thought she was ugly for years.
The door opened and Jim stepped in. He looked very thin and he was not smiling. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and with a family to take care of. He needed a new coat and he had nothing to cover his cold hands.
But that's okay, she bought him a watch chain.
Jim stopped inside the door. She couldn't afford a coat. Jim stopped inside the door. He was as quiet as a hunting dog when it is near a bird. His eyes looked strangely at Della, and if there was an expression in them that she could not understand, there was an expression. It filled her with fear. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor anything she had been ready for. He simply looked at her with that strange expression on his face.
That face expression that seemed to say, when did my wife turn into a schoolboy?
Della went to him. Jim, dear, she cried, don't look at me like that. I had my hair cut off and sold it. I couldn't live through Christmas without giving you a gift. My hair will grow again. You won't care, will you? My hair grows very fast. It's Christmas, Jim. Let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I got for you.
You've cut off your hair, asked Jim slowly.
Why is he talking like that?
That's how he talks. He seemed to labor to understand what had happened. He seemed not to feel sure he knew.
Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me now? I'm me, Jim. I'm the same without my hair.
Jim looked around the room. You say your hair is gone? He said.
Please stop making him talk like that.
This is how it talks.
You don't have to look for it, said Della. It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone, too. It's the night before Christmas, boy. Be good to me, because I sold it for you. Maybe the hairs of my head could be counted, she said, but no one could ever count my love for you. Shall we eat dinner, Jim?
Yeah, you need to stop looking at that daffy-ass head of yours, he said.
Oh, no.
And then, amidst the chaos, as Jim was considering what shade of brown he would most like to see his new schoolboy wife wear, he contemplated things. Jim put his arms around Della. For 10 seconds, let us look in another direction. Oh, it's getting sloppy up in here. $8 a week or $1 million a year. How different are they? They're very different. They're very different.
There's no Henry.
Henry don't know what he's talking about. Someone may give you an answer, but it will be wrong. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them.
They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And you know the guy with the gold was like trying to one-up everybody else.
I've used this joke too many times. I'm going to move on. My meaning will be explained soon. From inside the coat, Jim took something tied in papier. He threw it upon la table. I want you to understand me, Dell, he said in a new voice,
Good,
much
I like
more
this
dramatic.
voice better.
Nothing like a haircut could make me love you any less, given that I don't love you at all. Ha, ha, ha.
He didn't say that.
He did inside, but if you open that, you may know what I felt when I came in.
White fingers pulled off the paper, and then a cry of joy, and then a change to tears. For there lay the combs.
Woo.
The combs that Della had seen in a shop window and loved for a long time. Beautiful combs with jewels perfect for her beautiful hair. She had known they cost too much for her to buy them. She had looked at them without the least hope of owning them. And now they were hers, but her hair was gone.
Zounds!
But she held them to her heart and at last was able to look up and say, my hair grows so fast, Jim. And then she jumped up and cried, oh, oh. Jim had not yet seen his beautiful gift. She held it out to him in her open hand. The gold seemed to shine softly as if with her own warm and loving spirit. Isn't it perfect, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at your watch 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to show how they looked. I want to see how they look together.
Jim sat down and smiled. Della, he said, let's put our Christmas gifts away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use now because we done messed up. I sold the watch to get the money to buy the combs. And now that you got no hair, the combs is useless. And now I think we should eat our dinner of watch, chain, and combs.
The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the newborn Christ child. They were the first to give Christmas gifts. Being wise, their gifts were doubtless wise ones. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, guys. Oh, Henry's not saying this?
Most of these not useful.
Not really very wise, either. Like, what is a baby going to do with gold, frankincense, and myrrh?
Learn to juggle.
Each sold the most valuable thing. Oh, here I have told you the story of two children who were not wise. Each sold the most valuable thing he owned, he or she, in order to buy a gift for the other. But let me speak a last word to the wise of these days. Of all who give gifts, these two are the most wise. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the most wise. Everywhere they are the wise ones. They are the Magi.
And so the wise ones did talk of their wisdom while they were wisely wising in Wisetown. Why is he repeating wise so much?
He also said they're not wise, but they're the wisest.
Yes, and also, listen, Henry, don't platoon the end of your story here by just dumping the reason into the end. It's like, and by the way, here's what my story was about, kind of. A little jumbly, a little wumbly, Christmas.
It's a good story, though.
Boop.
It is a good story. And it doesn't end with gold, frankincense, or myrrh.
3 weeks later, Jim was killed by a rabid bunny.
Was it the Easter Bunny? Off-season?
Mm-hmm. That's in Gifts of the Magi 2, Electric Bunny Lou. And then in 3, Gifts of Magi 3, The Return of the Toilet Hair. But it's not like her hair, it's like a bunny that lives in the toilet.
Is that time it personal?
That's the toilet hair. No, that's 4.
Oh, it's personal by 4?
Yes. That time they're on a boat. They're on a boat, Anne. It's going fast, Anne. They got a nautical theme, Pashmina Afghan.
Anyway, that was the Gift of the Magi, sort of, in our version of the Gift of the... I mean, it was the same story. It's just...
Drop the curtain! Finn!
Bye.